Okay, if you have a Bible, turn to the book of Isaiah. I'll give you a verse and stuff in a minute here, but let me say this to start. If you're born again, and if you're born again, you've heard the expression all your life, or your Christian life. If you're born again, you started out before you were saved, before you were born again, with Adam's nature. That's why you needed to be born again. And as Jesus pointed out, this is not a physical type thing. This is a spiritual rebirth. You're already born once from your mom. And in that condition, you were in Adam's nature. Jesus comes along and says, ye must be born again. Okay. And once we're born again, now we have two natures. God did not erase the Adamic nature when you got saved. You still have Adam's nature. You still want to do, basically, maybe not to the same intensity, and maybe you don't seek it like you did when you were lost, but for the most part, we're still rotten to the core. We just, we've learned to dress it up and hide it and perfume it and make it look pretty and so on and so forth. But if you're born again, you have two natures. You have the born again Spirit of God nature, but you also have the Adamic nature, still there. And every now and then it wants to raise its ugly head. Now, not all messages that I preach or teach or that you listen to, they're not all intended for everybody with the same intensity. If I happen to one week preach on adultery, well, maybe for 90% of you, that won't even register because you conducted yourself as a fine, upstanding Christian couple. But some don't. If I teach on lying or stealing or gossip or whatever it might be, well, that might touch you a little bit. And maybe the rest of it, you just have to just leave on the plate and go your way and say, well, maybe next week I'll get hit between the eyes better with something. So our temptations are not the same. I've got a temptation with food. And it's not so much the food, it's the snacking. That's my killer. It's not that I sit there and gorge 18,000 calories in a meal. It's the snacking, the little nibbling that gets me. Other people have no problem with that at all. The diet commercials come on, they don't even register. They just ignore them because it doesn't affect them. Other people might have trouble with drugs or alcohol. Other people might have trouble with pornography or sex, illicit sex. So not all messages are going to be received by everybody in the same way. Which brings us to a point. Isaiah chapter 42. And in Isaiah chapter 42, there is verse 8, which says, I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images. So that little part in there, my glory, this is God speaking, my glory will I not give to another. In other words, God retains, by virtue of being the creator, the thinker, the innovator, the prime force, the prime mover, whatever term you want to call it, by virtue of his job description, he retains certain things unto himself. He does not give them to us. For instance, We can think, but we don't know everything. God does. We can see, but we can't see everything. If God were sitting at this table right now, I know he could look on the planet Mars and he could see a grain of sand, an individual single grain of sand, if he wanted to. I know that's a ludicrous type illustration, but it does serve an example that God is God for a reason. He lets us live a certain period of life, a certain time span. But until we get to see him and be with him in heaven, we don't get to live forever. Adam isn't here right now. Moses isn't here right now. David isn't here right now. Paul isn't here right now. It is appointed unto a man once to die, after that, the judgment. So there's certain things that God retains for himself. We can plant a seed. If it's a tomato bush, or if it's a tree or piece of grass, whatever it is, we can plant a seed. We can water it, we can nurture it, we can fertilize it, we can tend to it, we can protect it, we can watch it grow. But we can't make the seed. We can't make light. We can make things that replicate light. We have flashlights, we have laser beams, we have spotlights, we have candles, we have all these things, but we cannot make sustainable light. Certain things God retains for himself. Here's one of them. Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. And in verse 12, look at verse 19. Romans 12:19. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord. Vengeance. Ooh, that's a biggie in a lot of our lives. More so than others. Like I said at the beginning, not all messages are going to hit everybody at the same level and at the same spot. Vengeance is a common human trait. Definition of vengeance, you haven't figured it out. Punishment inflicted or retribution exacted for a perceived injury or wrong. Well, we get it. Somebody says something bad about you. They gossip about you. They go on Facebook or, whatever the medium is, and they say things about you. And it gets back to you. And you're hurt. You're offended. You're disappointed. You're mad. You're angry. What's the first thing we want to do? Get back at them. Some people are very, very good at that. Other people, they have a disposition and a demeanor of which they're not go for the throat type people. But they'll sit there and suffer in silence. They'll be crushed. They'll be hurt. They'll be disappointed. Other people are going to go for your throat. Other people will go for the jugular. They will exact retribution from you. So it depends where you fall on that spectrum. But vengeance is one of those human characteristics that, to one degree or another, we all have. We've all been hurt. We've all been maligned. We've all been gossiped about. We've all been disappointed. And we all react in different ways. Now, if God didn't put his foot down and say, vengeance is mine, he gives us a lot of things. We have the capacity to love. We have the capacity to, ask forgiveness or be forgiven. But we have the capacity for a lot of things. God has given us unlimited powers, as it were. I mean, good grief, we're in outer space now. We're making things that, revolve around the earth. We can pinpoint a mouse, within 6 inches or so from outer space. There's a lot of things that God has allowed us to do. But there are some things that he knows that for our benefit, these are to be exclusively reserved for him. You got a 3-year-old kid, let's say, 4-year-old kid. You give him a loaded AK-47. You say, well, now go out and play, but don't hurt yourself. What could possibly go wrong? Of course the kid's going to hurt himself and everybody else on the block. A loaded AK-47. Gee, what does this do? Brrr. Oh, that was neat. Brrr. And there it goes. The kid can't handle it. Emotionally, psychologically, in any other way, the kid is not prepared to handle a loaded AK-47. And God looks down at us and he says, you're not able to handle vengeance. You're not able to handle it because you don't understand what's going on. You can't see the whole picture. Yeah, somebody may have said something to you or about you, and you want to have vengeance. You want to get back at them. Well, usually we react in the dark. Maybe that person on Facebook didn't really say what you thought that they said, or maybe they didn't say it in the same way that you thought they said. Maybe that was conveyed to you differently, or maybe you took it the wrong way, or maybe you only got part of it. We're getting very, very good at that in communication, TV, radio and stuff. We can paste and, cut and paste and make somebody say basically anything we want them to say. We take a word here and a word there, and we sync the thing up. And we can make it appear like they're saying anything that we want them to say. But it's not true. So we usually react out of ignorance. We react out of fear, when we feel that we've been slighted or hurt or maligned. We usually overreact, that's for sure. We get angry, we get emotional, we get embarrassed. We can do all these things. And God says, I don't want you to get into that position. I don't want you to get to a point that when you hear somebody say something wrong or something bad or something untrue about you, that you react in this certain way. There is a physical reaction. The brain hears it. The brain activates certain organs in your body. They secrete certain hormones. And with overexposure, those hormones are detrimental in that quantity and in that frequency to your body. So we're supposed to listen to God. He says this, when it comes to vengeance, that's mine. That's I own vengeance. If you want to repay something, there's a way to go about it, but not the way you want to go about it. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord. So God puts certain prohibitions down for us for our own good. When he said, for instance, Thou shalt, in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt have no other gods but me. You think God said that because he felt insecure that day? You think that God said that because he couldn't stand up to all the flaky gods that we've pushed in this world? You think he's worried about Zeus and Hera and Aphrodite and Venus and Apollo and so on and so forth? You think he was worried about these clowns? You think he's worried about Satan? Do you think he's worried about any of these underworld characters that have pushed themselves to the world? Do you think he was afraid that he couldn't compete, that he couldn't come through, that he couldn't perform? Do you think that's why he said, thou shalt have no other gods before me? Oh, no. I don't want you to see the other side. No. God says that not out of any inferiority complex of his. He tells us that because he knows that if we go down that road, it is nothing but trouble for us. It is catastrophe for us. And so look what happened. We blew it. Coming out the gate, we blew it. And we've been blowing it ever since. There are certain things that we cannot handle. And when we get messed up with other gods, as it were, God knows that there's nothing but trouble coming our way. The least of which is an eternity in hell. So, when you take vengeance off the table because it's not ours by right, what does that do for us? I mean, God has a reason for it. Well, one of the things is that we don't have to keep score. And a lot of people, a lot of their lives are doing nothing but keeping score. Well, who likes me this week? How many likes did I get this week compared to last week? Oh, gee whiz, did I do something to tick somebody off? Oh, did I do something to make somebody mad? Every waking moment of our lives with some people is wrapped up in this idea of keeping score. Who likes us? Who doesn't like us? Everybody does it. Preachers do it. Well, how many people did he have in church last week? How many radio stations are you on? How many TV stations are you on? How much money did you pour in this week? We do it in the workplace. Well, how much money did you make? How many bonuses did you get? We're constantly keeping score. How many sales did you make? How many doors did you knock on? You ever wondered why Paul never really got bummed out? Or at least he didn't put it on paper that he got bummed out that he was sitting in prison for so many times for such a long period of time of his ministry? I mean, he wasn't thrown in for a weekend here or there. There was a few times that, yeah, it only ended up a weekend, but there was other times that he was literally in jail for years at a time, or house arrest, years at a time. And he never seemed to get bummed out about it. Why? Because he's not keeping score. Oh, how many people like me this week? Who cares? I've never understood that because, see, that's one of the things that maybe it doesn't bother me like it bothers other people. Other people don't have a nibbly type fixation, a snacking fixation. I do. So they can't really relate to my problem. I can't relate to a lot of other people's problem that they're so consumed about their status on Facebook. That to me is such an alien concept, it doesn't even register or compute in my brain. So God knows that these types of things, this anxiety, this angst, this pressure that we put on ourselves to always be on the vigilance. Well, who wronged me this week? Who said something bad? Oh, I got to get even with them. Oh, I know, I'll do this or I'll do that. And this constant upheaval in our lives, he knows the toll that it's going to take. He knows it's going to eat away at us. He knows that we're going to lose sleep. He knows that in our reaction and in our response to all this stuff, we're going to pile on more sins than the perceived sin that we thought was thrown against us. So somebody wrongs you, somebody hurts you, and maybe it's a legitimate hurt, maybe it's a legitimate wrong. Maybe they really did set out to screw you and just ruin your life, as it were. And you've got a legitimate reason or excuse to get back at them or get even with them. God knows what that's going to do in your life, that process of trying to get even or trying to get back at them or trying to get up on them. He knows the toll that it's going to take on you. You're going to pile up more sins than they did on the initial wrong that they did you. They're not going to lose any sleep. They couldn't care less. They're oblivious to the fact that you're losing sleep, that you're piling up sins, that you're losing fellowship and so forth with God. They couldn't care less. So who's the real loser here? It's us. It's us. God is so counterintuitive that you've heard me say this 1,000 times. I cannot relate to God on a lot of levels, most every level, unless he brings himself down to my level. I can't relate to him. He's too big, he's too powerful, he's too much. But the little bit that I do know of him, the little bit that is revealed in the Word of God, that he lets us see, he is really counterintuitive. He knows that you've been wronged, let's say. He knows that you've been gossiped on, if that's a right term. He knows that you've been misrepresented, maybe. He knows this. But what's he tell you to do about it? He tells you to forgive and forget. What kind of sense does that make to us? That makes no sense at all. It's an invitation. Do it again. Upside the head. Oh, sir, may I have another? Upside the other side. Oh, sir, may I have another? That's the way a lot of people look at this thing. So God knows that you've been hurt. He knows that you've been wronged. So what's he tell you to do? Forgive and forget. I'll tell you right now, that doesn't make any sense to me at all on a human level. It goes against everything that I've known and learned and experienced in life. It makes no sense. The only people that it probably does make sense to is maybe some Hindu Swami that's been sitting in a cave staring at his belly button for the last 80 years. And that's his whole focus and purpose in life. Maybe somebody like that, it might make some sense to. But for the rest of the world, it doesn't make any sense. So we come back to God and we say, God, you just don't understand. I'm the hurt one here. I'm the one that's been wronged. And you're telling me to forgive and forget? You just don't understand, do you? And God just sits there and rolls his eyes and shakes his head. He is counterintuitive to the end. I give him that. This is the deal. He tells us, he tells you and me to forgive and forget. But he won't. God does keep score. God does keep track of who hurts you. He does keep track of who wants to see you hurt. God does keep track. That's why he can tell you, forget it. Move on with your life. Put it behind you. Forgive and forget. Because I'm not, he says. I am keeping score. I have not forgotten you. I'm not going to treat you as a doormat. But you've got to do it my way. And there's where we get into trouble. We want retribution. We want satisfaction. We want the comeuppance to them. And so we go about it in our way. God says, no. Your way is wrong. Do it my way. And we say, well, what's your way, God? Forgive and forget. Oh, good grief. That doesn't make any sense at all. And so the battle is now between us and God now. Somebody else may have stepped in and got the wheel rolling, but now you see what I mean about we, in our response, are going to pile up more sins than the original thing that happened to us. We're the ones now hurting. We're the ones that are in conflict with God. We're the ones that our spirit is constantly upset. We're the one that is blowing it left and right. The other guy's moved on. He's gone to somebody else and messed with them. The passage that I gave you just a second ago, Romans chapter 12, verse 19. Let's read on. Let's read verse 20. I'll give you a second to re-find it here. Romans chapter 12, verse 20. Let's read the first one again, though, 19. Just get our minds set here. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord. Verse 20. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. Counterintuitive. Ding, 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 ding. Alarm bells are going off. It makes no sense. If thy enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. Ding, 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 ding. More bells going off. Doesn't make any sense. No, I can't go down that road. It is totally stupid. Thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing, thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. You want the ultimate payback? You want the ultimate satisfaction of getting even, of exacting retribution for a perceived wrong or a definite wrong? You want to get even? You've got to do it God's way. And what's God's way? Forgive and forget. Because when you forgive and forget, then he will step in and do your dirty work for you, if you please. If you try to do it on your own, you're just in for a world of hurt. God says, look, I'll play the bad guy here for you. I got your back. I got your six. Trust me. But we want to do it all on our own because that old Adamic nature just cries out, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Yeah, boy, that's in the Bible someplace. I do remember reading that one. Well, so is this one. If you want to get even, the ultimate way is forgive and forget. And then God steps in. And between all of us, who do you think is better at vengeance? You or God? Who do you think has more control and more power here? Who do you think knows the deepest recesses of their heart and soul? What makes them tick? What keeps them up at night? Who do you think can have your back better than God when it comes to dishing out vengeance? A couple of verses, and we'll end. Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 30. Now, I just got done saying, who do you think is better at vengeance? Who would you rather exact vengeance on them? You or God? Verse 30, Hebrews chapter 10. For we know him that has said, vengeance belongeth unto me. That's God. Vengeance belongeth unto me. I will recompense, saith the Lord. And again, the Lord shall judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God. You want retribution? You want vengeance? You don't get much better than having God having your back and doing it for you. But in order for that to come through, then you've got to be the bigger person. You've got to forgive. You've got to forget. And that's the crux of the whole matter. Because Adam's nature says there is no way in Hades that I'm going to forgive and forget. They crossed a line. They went too far. I cannot forgive and forget. God says, okay. Don't worry about it. But we do. And it destroys us. Heavenly Father, we need help here, boy. This is one of those subjects that every single one of us, to some degree or another, fall back on. Maybe we don't have the type of personality that we can go for the throat and really, get in somebody's face and call them out on it. But we stew, we fret, we have anxiety attacks, we feel bad, we're messed up. So Lord, for all these things, I'm not asking for strength to be a better vengifier as such. Lord, I'm asking for strength today to be a better forgiver and forgetter. That's my job in this whole thing. My job is to not keep score. My job is to not dole out punishment. Lord, you've said that my job is to forgive and forget. It's your job to exact retribution and punishment. Help us to see that, Lord. Help us to get off this merry-go-round, this pogo stick that never seems to go anywhere, is up and down and up and down and up and down, never getting anywhere. Lord, give us the strength to believe this book, to step out in faith and say, well, maybe, just maybe, you just might know what you're talking about from time to time. Because on the face of it, it seems so counterintuitive, it seems so unrealistic that most of us, we don't even give it a chance. So God, that's my prayer today for me. And by extension, those who love you, that you would give us, Lord, the ability to be able to forgive and forget and let vengeance lie with its rightful owner. And that is you and only you. In Jesus' name.